Thanks, guys. It's really excited to be here, although I am a little bit jet lagged because I've done Miami and then a week of shenanigans at DEFCON. I'm a security operations goon. I've been there for 2 years as a security operations goon, but I've actually been to DEFCON since 2000 and tried never to miss a year. My whole approach to this presentation is really going to be from some of the personal experiences I've had, a lot of support from the IT security community. Please follow me on Twitter. I'm at @fat_hobbit. For obvious reasons, when I'm fat, I look like Sean Austin, but when I'm thin, I look like Henry Rollins. So that's a pretty good thing. So I'll just tell you about my role a little bit as global security lead. Come on in, guys. Wow, didn't think I was going to be this popular, but malware is fun. In my role as global security lead, I kind of pick up the basket for a SaaS company with 17,000 customers worldwide and about 3.5 million endpoints. So these are normally small, medium, and businesses using our application to monitor and provide a platform to deliver security on. What I'm going to talk about in a lot of cases is really about today an investigation that I was brought into when one of our customers picked up the phone and said, "We're kind of screwed, we've been attacked, what can you do to help us out?" And this is going to inform this story quite a bit. I tend to do a lot of traveling. I'm located in Edinburgh, Scotland. My second home is Heathrow Terminal 5. And now it's the BA Lounge at Heathrow Terminal 5. And I hail from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And one of my gigs, which I'm really proud of, was I was the lead architect and project manager for something called the Canadian Centre of Human Rights. And we put together from basically layer 1 all the way up to layer 7 a security regime to protect the information within this building from advanced persistent threat actors, okay? Which of course lasted for until the last 3 days when the shadow brokers dropped a whole bunch of O days for Cisco ASAs, making our lives really miserable. And you know, one of the things is I was asked to comment, I think it was for SC Magazine on this, 4 years ago now, we had the hacking team breach, right? The shady Italians that were building surveillance software using zero-day flash exploits. Well, 600 gigabytes of their data ended up on the web, which spawned off our current, flock of exploits. I tend to think that these 0 days for Juniper, Cisco, and other manufacturers are going to result in a feeding frenzy by cyber criminals. I want to share a really seminal event that happened at DEFCON. I don't know if you saw coverage. Anyone here go to DEFCON? All right, good. Okay, sorry if I yelled at you in my role as a goon, but it happens. So this is really interesting because autonomous warfare has now come to the security pen testing environment. What we're seeing is essentially computers that are building exploits and patching systems autonomously. Now, the fact that it was at DEFCON and there was like 22,000 attendees roughly or more attendees was really important because this sends a very powerful message to nation states that the United States now has the technology, and I'm Canadian by the way, but the United States has the technology to autonomously hack networks. Now the good news is who's here is a pen tester, badass malware writer? Who are those people in the audience? Okay, no one puts their hands up, that's good. Upset y'all. But the point here is that this is a message saying, listen, we are building the capability to unleash hell on a nation state adversary, okay, autonomously. So it's something to keep in mind. Now the good news is this machine went up against some of the most skilled hackers that are allowed to travel to the United States. And the good news here was that they soundly kicked this machine's ass, okay? So we're not in a situation where the machine won against the humans yet, but they didn't go up against IBM Watson. Now this presentation was designed to engage and talk about malware, but my opinion is, backed up by the numbers from the FBI, our biggest problem in cybercrime hasn't anything to do with malware, folks. You would think from, Gavin's presentation this morning, you would think this is all about, ransomware, denial of service, this stuff in red that you see. But look at what our top victims are, at least in the United States. Non-payment, non-delivery, okay? 419 overpayment, that's where I send you a check and you get to keep some of the check to test to make sure your bank account's working. Identity theft and auction. Certainly identity theft is a result of malware, okay? But the biggest losses happening here now, and auction is basically I put a picture of a tractor up, you pay for it, and then I never send you the tractor. So one of the things that is really interesting, let's go back, is we're seeing a trend where business email compromise. That's the hackers asking nicely for you to send me money, okay? No malware really used in this type of attack. So when you think about the security stack, the technology piece that's designed around anti-malware, one of the biggest things that we could do collectively to win against cyber criminals is do that user security awareness training. Because user security awareness training doesn't just work inside the business, it works in the home and on the mobile platform. And the biggest problem we're having in cybercrime right now is we're building excellent business bunkers, but we're not talking about the home PCs and the mobile platforms as much, which are really leading to the #1 losses that are out there. And if you listen to the media's hysterical reporting around ransomware, think about the individual experience of ransomware. What is it? It's generally petty theft. It's a brick through your car window, okay? It's not something that is, in the sense of the word, costing $246 million, the way business email compromise is. Now, I'm pretty sure the other problem that we have with these statistics is that are you really going to call the police and file a police report for something that's considered petty theft? For, half a Bitcoin in ransom or 2 Bitcoin in ransom, right? You can't even get a police constable out once your home is broken into. So I would suggest that probably the ransomware issue is underreported overall. So, which brings us to how are we going to combat this FUD? Well, we have to move away from sensationalism. Who here remembers the hospital that got breached? In the US, right? Which one, right? Exactly. They've all been breached. So initially it was what? $3.2 million for the ransom, and then when somebody looked up how much an actual Bitcoin cost, it went down to 17 grand. University of Calgary, another one, $20,000 in ransomware. These are the sensationalist things that we're talking about. In general, what is the cost of a ransomware attack? $150, $200, $300, right? The actual cost. Now there's some cleanup costs and some other stuff like that. A couple of problems that we're having is there's a great presentation by 2 of the top security researchers at Kaspersky that talk about the problems with attribution. To finish the argument on attribution, I'll just say it right now, the only people qualified to do attribution is the various Department of Justices. Because once they have enough information to lay down, they can go to a court and the court will actually say, yes, I think these are bad people, right? The problem that we had is we have a lot of, I'm going to say talking heads in the media that are going to pin things on the Russians because it's politically convenient to do so, and that the attribution, again, is very difficult to do. The other thing that we have, especially in the small, medium business world, is gigantic reports that come out from like Cisco and from Verizon that talk about enterprise struggles, but are not talking about the small, medium business experience. And what is the difference? The bottom line difference between an SMB, SME getting attacked by cyber criminals is it's an extinction level event potentially for them, okay? It is not an extinction level event for Lockheed Martin, right? And we all know about Titan Rain, the attacks that went on now close to 15 years ago, where Lockheed Martin got breached as a result of the RSA hack, and they lost hundreds of millions of dollars in intellectual property, okay? They are not out of business. So that's something to consider. So if you're gonna do some malware research, really basic malware research, where's the best place to find malware? it's stolen content sites, okay? So this is one of those slides I like to put up if you're on the offense and you want to look at things like drive-by downloads with hopefully a VM and not your actual home PC. These are great places to find malware and script-based attacks and JavaScript injections and stuff like this, which absolutely tells me that preventing users from going to places like this with their work PCs and with their home PCs is probably in the best interest of all of us that perhaps don't like, you know, getting that phone call saying, hey, something's renamed all my files to LOCKY on the end of them. What does that mean? So this is a great place to actually find malware. Also email. Not surprising, these are some stats that just blew my mind, that 93% of phishing emails contain a ransomware payload, right? So if you don't have some sort of mail gateway filter and you're running an unpatched old Exchange server or SendMail, you're just asking for a world of pain, okay? So really, if you're in front of your customers or business and you want to make a little bit more of an investment in security, email at the perimeter, some sort of filtering device, or into the cloud first and grab it. And actually, funny story here, Office 365 and Google are getting a lot better at detecting malware embedded into emails. And by a lot better, I mean, you know, 1 out of 5, okay? It's not exactly a tremendous amount. So here's the threat actor that we talk about a lot of the time. You'll see that this was delivered by a Visual Basic script. So the question becomes, in malware, if this is designed to be delivered by a Visual Basic script, what is the exploit? The exploit is the human. The exploit is the human that perhaps wasn't paying attention during security awareness training or in the last presentation about enabling macro content, okay? So this is where we as security practitioners rely too heavily on our technology stack, and you can see all the different layers that this threat bypassed, right? And essentially, it hosed the endpoint with ransomware, okay? So my point is this, is the number one takeaway here is accept the fact that your security stack is going to fail, okay? And accept the fact that your job or your customer, your continued relationship with your customer comes down to you being able to recover from when the security stack fails, because it will. And we'll be talking about how to make it fail in a moment. But first I want to turn some attention to what I call the threat landscape from the perspective of the attacker, okay? So when we look at the inventory of software across all of the machines in the US, we can get a good idea of where the attack surface is going to come from. And this is a great example. Look at number 1, right? Courtesy of the hacking team, as I said earlier on, about 3 years ago, a bunch of zero-day flashes. Cyber criminals generally are lazy, so they are going to take that stuff and reiterate it and reiterate it, reiterate it. Finally, to the point where major vendors like Google say, enough is enough, we're pulling Flash support completely out of Chrome, and I think that's starting soon. So that's really good news. Here's where we've been let down, okay? So Apple pulled support for QuickTime on PCs, not on Mac products, okay? But you guys are all badass hackers, so you're using Mac. But the point here is back in the day when we were building our base images, who here was installing QuickTime and then occasionally had to install iTunes, which surreptitiously installed QuickTime, right? So we have a gaping vulnerability here because when these 2 zero-day advisories came out, Apple's response was, meh, we're not supporting QuickTime on PCs anymore. Now, that's a problem, okay? Because 80% of the install base out there has QuickTime in one version or another. And that's a clear and present danger. Which kind of goes to what I said in terms of ransomware marketing. You got the University of Calgary here, average ransom around 300, and millions of dollars being made in ransomware. These are depressing stats. And the fact that cyber criminals are kicking our butts in a lot of ways, leads to what I'm going to call IT depression. It's why we drink too much, it's possibly why we don't get enough exercise, a whole bunch of personal reasons go into that. The point here is to look at a couple of these things. For ransomware, it's a free pen test, okay? It's going to make you more aware of the organization's lack of investment in security. Now, I do not recommend pointing the finger saying, I told you so when it happens, but you want to get into a constructive dialogue about this kind of stuff and say, well, it could be a lot worse and here's why, right? So look at it as an opportunity. I also think that cyber criminals really enjoy ransomware because they know that they could actually end that business. And it is more profitable to them to revisit that business occasionally, maybe every 6 months. They have a little Outlook reminder saying, hey, we should go and see if these guys have cleaned up their ransomware and tightened their security from last time. So that's the way that we need to approach this. The other thing that we need to do is we need to understand fundamentally how malware gets onto systems. And it's not magical, okay? It all has to do something. Has to exploit a system vulnerability or a user vulnerability for access, okay? It has to do that thing. Has to install some code in the system, memory, modify the registry or WMI for persistence, generate network traffic to command and control node, possibly drop files on the system, although there is fileless malware, and run an encryption process against your files if the payload, which we're pretty certain in the SMB, SME space, is going to be some sort of ransomware attack. If it's not doing the above, it's not malware, okay? So that's a couple of things to keep in mind when you're looking at malware and specifically the cyber kill chain brought to us by Lockheed Martin. So I just want to go through this a little bit so that you understand when we're picking apart a piece of malware, where we can see the opportunities and look at what is failing at our business. Now, I tend to think that recon and weaponization, unless you have big dollars to get something like dark trace or a threat intel feed for typo squatting or something like that, recon and weaponization aren't things that we can really do much about, okay? Because it's all happening out there in the cloud or whatever we call it. But delivery, exploitation, installation, C2, and the resulting actions, we can do something about, okay? We have tools and technologies that along that part of the infection and that part of the exploit and that part of the activity, we have tools that we can do something about that situation. So this slide is up here to suggest to you that we should not become demoralized, but in fact, we have, odds are, the opportunity to interdict the malware using a variety of different technologies in each of these categories. And some of them do overlap, and we'll talk about what that is. So, with 7-time Grammy Award winner Taylor Swift, she is going to help us understand exploitation, okay? So, as I mentioned, the hacking team hacked, right? Well, look at some of the pricing on how much 0 days go for that they were selling, okay? Previous to this disclosure, it was all kind of shady and made up numbers, and now we know what they were selling this stuff for. We understand the relationship between the cost of these exploits to this cyber criminal underground. Hence, a huge rise in bug bounty programs in order to combat this, in order to make it more likely that a cyber criminal or want-to-be cyber criminal or a black or gray hat is turned towards white hat-ism by selling to a bug bounty program instead of going down the road of criminality, okay? And again, you know, there's a direct correlation between what hacking team built and to what we're seeing here in terms of the exploit. So this is recorded futures data. 80% of the exploit kits that are in use today are targeting Adobe Flash, either unpatched or 0 days. So what is our first lesson? Uninstall Adobe Flash, and we have 100% defense against attacks attacking Adobe Flash. We have a few Internet Explorer attacks out there, about 10%. And who's the super nerd that knows what that symbol is? Silverlight. Installed by default for no goddamn reason I can figure out, other than to log in as to an MSDN portal, because somebody told me that it was required for that. Not 100% sure if that was bullshit or not. But the point here is it's lurking there on all of our machines, and I can't figure out, at least in our enterprise, what the hell anyone would need it for. All right? So I would like to get rid of Silverlight, which brings us down to about a 90% defense. Now, again, what I really want to say to you guys is it's really funny that this one relatively obscure company comes out with this kind of stuff, but does this get mainstream media attention? No, not at all. And we all know that this is much more effective defense than any of the security stack we can get. The far more common problem that we have in malware builds is malware that specifically targets the lack of a patch. Okay? So think about this. We have Burn Monday, where I push all of my exploits that I wrote to the bug bounty people. We have Patch Tuesday, and then we have IDAPRO Wednesday, where I figure out what the actual patch fixed so I can write an exploit for anyone that doesn't have that patch. So this is the problem that we have with patching right now, is every time Microsoft issues out a patch, it's actually a blueprint for an exploit, okay? So the point here is that if we are patching quarterly or monthly, we are behind the times, folks. We have to look at patching weekly, our infrastructure, okay? Because the problem is the reverse engineers out there are going to build the exploits for the lack of a patch in record time. Because guess what? They use agile development like many of you devs do. They all sit around and say, well, how are we going to host people this week? So they're all kind of doing that. And it's really interesting because this is where there's two folks making a lot of money in cybercrime. And it's not who you think. It's not these folks that are reverse engineering patches. All that takes is a little bit of time with IDAPRO and a test lab. The guys making big money are the bot herders and the money launderers. Those are the folks that are really making out like gangsters. So, exploit kits for sale cheap. The cyber underground is filled with folks pimping their exploit kits. Okay. Now, this is really interesting because remember when we talked about command and control, CNC nodes? Cyber criminals are collecting analytics about the success of their exploit kits that are landing because they are marketing their products to other wannabe cyber criminals. Okay? So one of the important things about command and control is it tells you your rate of success, your rate of click, your rate of infection, the forecasted amount of money you're going to make from ransomware attacks. All of this data is being compiled. And as you see, sometimes exploit kits go dark, right? Angular and nuclear, no longer popular anymore. In fact, went dark. The targeting of law enforcement and something new and better coming along, right? Like RIG, for instance, all of a sudden we have a shift in the attack patterns that are going on out there. So this is important stuff to pay attention to when you're thinking of your defenses. So exploit mitigation. You know, we talked about reducing the attack surface. If you're not using the software, uninstall it, okay? It makes a lot of sense. There's lots of good stuff that's free out there on the internet to prevent malware, to prevent ransomware. Do a little bit of research and look at what those tools are. There's also now a lot of online services that you can upload a file that's been encrypted, and if it's possible for them to either brute force or they already have the key ready to go to decrypt your files. So do everything you can to never pay a ransom, okay? Because the money that the cyber criminals make goes into iterations of their malware to make it more and more dangerous. Thank you very much, NSA, for leaking a whole bunch of new exploits out onto the internet. That's going to be good for everyone. A couple more things here to just think about. Lots of great resources, including your own UK government, for user awareness training. This is the biggest investment that you can make in your user population, your home, your loved ones. Really, this is the kind of thing that we can focus on. And, you know, the technology stack, unfortunately, will let us down. So again, we're going to talk with Taylor Swift here, and we're going to take a look at an example payload of CryptX 3.100. Okay, not surprising. This is a ransomware attack. But what was interesting is that it also dropped a credential sealing DLL. Okay, what does this tell us? It tells us that the cyber criminals plan on revisiting you several times after ransomware your ass. They now want to pull your credentials and find any other way to make a mess out of your life. Okay, so this is where I'm saying is that once you've had a ransomware incident, it's not like, woo, we restored the files, we're all good. No, there's a lot more work to be done when we do IR for ransomware. Now, how did we sort of come across this issue? The FDA in the United States and the HIPAA legislation suggested that ransomware in a healthcare setting is considered a data breach and is reportable, okay? For this very reason, because a cyber criminal that gets access to a system with medical records is going to monetize that attack in addition to holding you at ransom. So this is the threat that I talked about here, and we're gonna talk a little bit about this. This was an IT provider in the UK who got phone call after phone call on Monday morning and discovered that about 40 of their clients had been infected with ransomware all at the same time. Okay, that's known in IT as a shitty day. Okay, so they asked for some help, and I was able to kind of engage and help out, and this is an ongoing investigation. We got a hold of the Trojan that was used in the attack, and pushing it through VirusTotal yielded a detection rate of about 7 out of 54 commercial antivirus engines. Okay, not awesome. And the hilarious thing is that Microsoft actually detected it, and Microsoft doesn't detect shit. So I was like, wow, okay, this is not good. Later on, I'll kind of do the big reveal, but I'll do it now. The sad thing is that this Trojan was from 2012, okay? 2012 and 7 out of 54. Not cool at all. Now, later on, I ran it. So look at the dates there. That's 2016, 1/24, so January. By, I guess it's like the 5th, that's May, right? We now have 37 out of 56 commercial antivirus engines detecting it, okay? So that's something to consider. If your approach to security, none of you here are of this mindset because you probably wouldn't be at BSides Manchester if you were, but if your approach is, I'm just gonna rely on my Kaspersky and I'm good to go for security, it's not good. For your odds of hitting something are pretty bad, because this is, again, keep in mind, a Trojan that delivered the ransomware payload to these endpoints from 2012. So I got to playing around a bit. If you think I know a little bit about ransomware, there are a whole bunch of people out there that know a heck of a lot more than me. Check out Graceful Security as a good example. But I was able to rename the file to not that, and then edit it. And this is like using a Hex Editor, okay, because I'm not a programmer, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn last night. But I just copied some text from the binary and put it at the end of this file where all the zeros were. And that's how I got it down to 22 out of 53 commercial antivirus engines, okay? I'm not a hacker, right? There are people that can write this shit from scratch that will continue to put it through iteration and iterations of VirusTotal until they get something that passes right through their targeted attack, okay? So keep that in mind with anybody with a Hex Editor. All of these zeros in here are what exploit kits will use to drop extra text or extra binary information into to, again, change those virus definitions to bypass. It also introduces some entropy in the file so that if it's an encrypted binary, you put the entropy and now it doesn't look like an encrypted binary. You now have another way of getting past antivirus. The sole point here is that antivirus is not particularly good. So this was used as an attack. So the attack came, the Trojan was landed from this IP addresses in a European country, okay? A friendly European country. So let's be clear there. And then again, 2012, it was a Trojan designed to deliver a CryptoLocker payload. It wasn't actually CryptoLocker, okay? So that's an important thing. We had to put a program that then called the malware from someplace else, from that server there. And the encryption key was a one-time key generated, because the first thing I did was run it and thought, well, maybe if the key stays the same, we can just quickly write a Python script, get everything back. No. So working with law enforcement, we found different IP addresses used in the attack, and rather than put out a grandiose report about this, the only thing we have to suggest that it's Russian cyber criminals was an IP address that was the origin of a great deal of spam for a ransomware campaign. Okay? So again, I'm not rushing off and saying that this is, Russian cyber criminals. What I am saying is that this was obviously a cybercrime group that had a pretty elaborate infrastructure that used a whole bunch of different IP addresses all over the world in an attack on that particular customer. So, we got that slide. Thank you. Okay, so basic malware analysis. What are we really doing here? Essentially, there's two ways to look at malware analysis. One is run the damn thing and see what happens. The other is look at the actual binary and do some really nerdy stuff. And I'm more of a let's just run it and see what happens. So, platform to use, XP Service Pack 3. You can use Windows 7, but if it's something from 2012, chances are even Windows Defender will get in the way of it. You want to install your apps so that it let us to be infected. So older Adobe Flash, Java, Silverlight, Adobe Reader, unpatched Microsoft Office viewers, and with the file converters. Don't install AV on your testing platform. And the two things that I really use here are Wireshark and something called RedShot. Okay, Wireshark, who here knows what Wireshark is? All the hands in the room should go up. All right, cool. RedShot, you might not have heard of it, but you can use anything. What you're looking for is something that shows you the registry before the malware is run and then the registry after, okay? And just to see what some conclusions are here. So this was a file that was sent to us, and it was named as the person.zip. Okay, so a little stealthy there, pretty cool, but you're gonna open something that has your name on it, I guess is what they thought. As you can see, the file has detection 35 out of 56, commercial antivirus engines detected, now, at the time we got it, not so much. You'll see that the command and control URL is hard-coded. It's hard-coded into the binary, and again, 6 out of 68 web scanning engines are only throwing up that binary or that URL as being dangerous, which, it's damn dangerous is what I'm gonna say. And just some stuff that pulled out of more of an advanced toolkit that we'll talk about, but basically Cuckoo Sandbox shows that, it performs some HTTP requests, it does process injection. Who here's gone to a computer and asked, how come there's like 20 notepads spawned in Task Manager, but Notepad isn't running on the machine? That's definitely a sign of malware, because what they've done is they've injected their process into Notepad to maintain persistence or doing whatever they're doing. You can also see it as explorer.exe and any sort of other app. And then again, it installs itself for auto run at Windows startup. Okay, so I've got a short video here that I'm just gonna figure out how to play. I think I just clicked this, okay? And this is just basically what we did here. So the first thing you want to do is really check out to make sure that your network stack is working properly, okay? And that you're also in the DMZ, or better yet, on an IP address that is not inside the corporate network, okay? Pro tip here. And also, if your binary is, and that's why you do a little bit of research on it first, if it is aware of a virtual environment, then then be very careful, because that's how you blow up a MacBook Pro. So first thing we're doing here is we're taking a snapshot of the VM's registry before we're going to run it. So there we go, and that way we can compare the two. And then because I'm a bit of a nut here, I'm going to make sure that I know my network stack is working properly. Because what I'm very interested here in is what does this zip file actually do from a network perspective, because malware will reveal itself at the network layer generally. So here I'm just pinging, and look at that. Wow, ICMP works. Yay me. Okay, and then so we're seeing the echo and replies, which is really great. So we know everything's ready to go. We go to our live malware, and there's a few selections there, but we're going to open up that one. This is other stuff that I was working on. Warning. And check it out. So this is JavaScript. So this doesn't require user interaction. The idea here is the zip file is received. She clicks on it. She clicks again. And then nothing, right? But something. So here we can see what happened is it checked with DNS, and it found the IP address of that server, which tells us that at one point that server was probably compromised and working as the command and control for the bad guys. Now you'll notice the HTTP GET request, okay, or I think it'll come up again. But the point is, because I think I showed up. Now we're doing our second shot. So we've got two things. We've got the network capture, and we have what happened when we ran the binary and what it did to the registry. Now let me ask you this question. If you receive a document, is it reasonable that you would have 67 registry changes happen when you open that document, right? No, okay, is the answer. Including a whole bunch of interesting things, including a Windows script call right there, okay? So this is just one of those things where if you take a regular Word document and you open it up, you may see some registry changes, but nothing like this, right? So you definitely have a feeling that you've got some malware going on. And then here I'm just doing a quick tour of what it is. I want to go back to that GET request. So please scroll down so we can see it. Thank you. Okay, this gorsjo.exe is the actual ransomware payload. Okay, that is the actual thing that is going to download and encrypt your files. So that's kind of the end of the basic malware analysis. And I'll take us to the next slide here because there's a lot more you can do, but I just wanted to say something, show you guys something quick and dirty, and also cover the whole ranty part of my presentation earlier. But Cuckoo Sandbox, anybody using that, playing around with that? Yeah, kind of cool, right? Thug, really great for analysis of drive-by download attacks, okay? Bro, again, some people like Wireshark, some people like Bro. The most important thing is to be able to follow a session. If you're going to go into more depth on this, you want to maybe go down to the packet capture layer and really look at the packets coming across. Volatility is really excellent, and IDA Pro, of course. Who here is IDA Pro? Played with it? Yeah, okay, so awesome. Everybody's on the same page there.
Can I just come in there?
Yep.
A lot of that starting out have a problem with getting the Windows 7, the Windows 8, the Windows 10. Modern.ie, where Microsoft's going to provide free VMs pre-installed with all the kit in there. It's 20-day license, whatever it is. They're very happy with everyone using it. You don't have to go get an SDN license. You don't have to get a huggy copy of Windows to do it. Combined with that, it means you've got a fresh VM every time.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I mentioned is the first thing you do is you snapshot your VM that's not infected first, okay? Because then otherwise you're restoring your VM. But really good point. The other thing though, and this is the one caution about using somebody else's VM for this, is that you'll find that you'll want to fine tune it. So a good example is if your VM has Chrome installed on it, the first thing Chrome does when it launches is checks with Google to see if there's an update for Chrome. And a lot of apps are like that. So you'll want to customize your malware analysis platform with Wireshark on and fine tune it so that you don't get all this extra network traffic that's going to confuse your analysis. So VM snapshot, red shot 1, Wireshark on, we infect all the things. Red Shot 2, we compare, observe the Wireshark traffic, trace the IP address to the host country just for shits and giggles, see where the attack's coming from, post phase, and then restore the VM from snapshot. That's kind of what happens. So, right, malware dependencies. So, the number one thing for malware, and it's dependent on you not backing up your files. Okay, so my advice is to make sure that you have solid backups. This is the thing that keeps your job when everything else hits the proverbial fan. Super important. This is a major problem right now with malware command and control. WordPress is basically the old way of exploiting a website was I just exploit the website and I put up my banner and I'm super cool, right? What the cyber criminals are doing now is they're going after WordPress sites specifically to hide their command and control, to use it to blast out tons of spam, okay? So what I'm saying to you guys, I'm pleading with you guys here, don't be part of the problem. And absolutely, if you have WordPress inside your organization, this should be segmented off in the network so that you can have a really good idea and control and logging about for this box. It's so bad that there's a threat intel feed just for WordPress login brute forces. Okay, so if you do have a website, a WordPress site, this will tell you at least who is attacking it. So it comes out on Twitter, and you can follow it right there. So Dukas 2.0, I just want to talk about this one a little bit. This was the Israelis. It was a pretty serious advanced persistent threat actor type of attack. It was used a whole bunch of 0 days, okay? And then the question I always get, well, if that's the case, like, it's 0 days, what can I do to defend myself against it? And, I'm a not-for-profit and I have no money, or I'm a for-profit business and I don't want to spend any money, which are the two type of things that we hear about all the time. So what's really interesting here is that the attackers figured out servers to generally act as command and control, and they obfuscated the command and control through different protocols, okay? So when we think about malware and the next generation of malware, we're really talking now about protocol changes for the command and control so that we can't see it the way we could here. We're talking about command and control over HTTPS, right, with a stolen certificate to further obscure so that we can't peek inside without something like the burp suite to do a man-in-the-middle attack. However, there's a couple of things here that, even though this is an advanced persistent threat, could have given up the fact that something here was going on. If we had some egress filtering, okay, that said workstations inside my domain cannot communicate directly to the internet through DNS, we would have caught these guys, right? Because one of their tactics was to send fake TCP/IP packets to IP 8.8.8.8. Now, who here can tell me what 8.8.8.8 is, right? Pretty much everybody in the room, right? Google's DNS servers. Would you be sending IP to Google's DNS servers? No, you would be sending DNS, right? So think about this from a number of different areas. There's an opportunity to catch these guys at your firewall, right? So you have your workstation in one VLAN segment that says DNS traffic can only go to my Active Directory domain controller, which has DNS on it, all right? So there are opportunities to get these guys. The other thing is, these IP addresses, okay? You would, if you were doing some logging on your system, you would see connections being made out of your organization to these IP addresses, even when the humans had gone home for the day. And if you look at your logs from, say, 1 o'clock in the morning to 6 a.m. in the morning, and you see browsers that you don't have installed on any of your endpoints surfing HTTP or HTTPS, you have a problem, okay? So there are ways to combat these advanced persistent threat actors. And that's why I feel kind of optimistic that from the technology perspective, we actually can win against these guys fairly easily. We just have to stop building flat networks, okay? And if we segment our different pieces of our network, and if we put in firewall rules to catch those indications of compromise, like DNS from a workstation directly to Pakistan, who here thinks that's a good idea or normal? No, right? And who here thinks putting printers on the internet is an awesome idea, directly on the internet, right? And because then Weave gets to send you anti-Semitic messages to all your universities. So I just really feel that even though I rail kind of against that security technology stack in my presentations, there's so much more we could be doing at the firewall layer and looking at our traffic and understanding that malware will betray itself at the network layer. And one of the ways is really to look at what does the business need to accomplish its business goals, and ask them what relevance Flash and Silverlight has for that, right? So again, Weave, he found a whole bunch of printers, port 9600 exposed on the internet, and he sent anti-Semitic messages with giant penises on them. So that was not good for your network security. So what really does it come down to? This is sort of the keys to success in combating what I'm going to say the average, normal, run-of-the-mill ransomware is. There's lots of stuff we can do. That user awareness training program just really has to get on board. If you don't want to do it or you feel that it's not good, that's what interns are for. You bring one in and you say, I'm going to give you a cybersecurity internship, and your job is to execute this user training, cybersecurity user training. They are so enthusiastic to get experience. It's only later on in life they become jaded and twisted like the rest of us. So give them a chance to get jaded and twisted, right? Again, you know, the number one thing down here is just be prepared for the technology stack to fail. I'm not a super gifted programmer. I cannot write malware from scratch. The reality is nor can most of the cyber criminals out there. There's this great study that came out from the University of London that suggested that 60% of the cyber criminals that they arrest have had previous criminal history. So what does that mean? It means that they used to break into cars, or they used to break into houses. They got tired of being chased by dogs, and they'd much rather work from the comfort of their living room, just like the rest of us. So keep that in mind, that a lot of the majority of these attacks, and again it goes back to the sensationalism of the media, are not like the Lex Luthors of cybercrime here, okay? It's pretty low-hanging fruit that's out there. And again, you're not alone. There's, from CompTIA, there's great training and support and organizational certification that you can latch onto. The other thing that is really good is to be aware of some of the threats and the things that are coming out. I like the CompTIA Smart Brief, Recorded Future, and Daily Sentinel. The first 3 paragraphs of Daily Sentinel are really great, and then they try to sell you ISO 27001 as the solution to everything. So great, I love the first 3 paragraphs, but I'm like, hey, now they're talking about like business email compromise. And I'm like, how are they going to try and sell me ISO 27001 for this? And somehow they figure out how to get that in there. So great job. I wrote a pamphlet that you can download. It goes through 7 attacks. It's sort of the companion guide to one of my other presentations called Meaningful Measurement that I'm going to be giving at 44Con. I'm super pumped about that. But this runs through all sorts of attacks. Stuff that you should care about, stuff that you probably don't want to care about, and I do kind of think this is what happens when marketing gets a hold of it. Cyber bullets are a thing, y'all. Okay, yeah. So where are we here? Yeah, we've got Taylor Swift and kind of a harbinger of destruction here. This. So we all remember the movie Hackers. Because, you know, it's just so filled with awesome. But But we do remember the idea that putting IP addresses on nuclear power plants, on boats, and on oil rigs, or really anything potentially that can go boom, is probably not a good idea. So I wrote a piece for USA Today on the future of cybercrime. And truly, I believe, and this is even reinforced now with the shadow brokers' exploits, what we're going to see are attacks. Could be ransomware, could be other attacks on our Internet of Things infrastructure. This is, I now go back to my firewall slide and say you should have a VLAN for your Internet of Things so that you can see what traffic they're going to and what type of information they might be sending. I think that's really, really important because, you know, we do not want the ship to sink, as it were. So this is my view of the cyber attack kill chain. This is where we can map our security technology to the 5 things that we can actually do about it, okay? And notice, my friends, that when we're talking about WAN to LAN communication, that's network layer, endpoint to endpoint, we're talking now about our users, LAN to WAN, we're talking about egress, and finally, again, endpoint stuff that even users can perhaps assist themselves with. So if you want to, we can have a discussion around what technologies you may need in your business. What it comes down to, in my view, is put in a layered defense, build your security stack around proactive, reactive, and detective, with user awareness training being the most proactive. Manage it from one console or a few consoles if you have to. Use hosted services and scalable services so that you can adapt. And with that, I think we have like 3 minutes for Q&A, or are we out?
5 maybe.
We got 5 minutes for Q&A. I got my yellow card there, so I knew. Are there any questions? And now that I see a little one, I apologize for any cussing that I might have said. I didn't use really bad words, but a few bad words, right? It's okay. All right, nobody's going to jail. Question? Sure.
Okay, so in the little malware analysis demonstration you showed us, you had all your tools like on the VM, so you had like Wireshark.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems like it'd be quite easy to write some malware that would have to do a trigger behavior that's contingent on the existence of those tools on those.
This is a great point. So, and this blew my mind. So I looked at some commercial antivirus software, and I looked into the memory of it, and I saw some VMware hooks in the antivirus software. And I'm like, what the what? That makes no sense. One of the things that you can do to trick malware that is aware of it being in a VM environment is for it to look and think that it's in a VMware environment, and then it doesn't execute. So you're absolutely correct. And that's why a lot of folks will jump an operating system as well. So if it's Windows malware, they might be working in Linux, for instance, to obscure the fact that it is in a VM environment that it's trying to run. And yes, it will do an inventory. That's actually one of the DLLs that dropped, was it did an inventory of the software that was installed. And it's very easy, you're right, to code it to say, if Wireshark is installed, do not infect.
So my question was, if you wanted to monitor things like registry changes from not on the VM,
Yes.
could you tell us how to do that?
Yeah, you could do it. Windows and things like Tripwire, more expensive type software, will allow you to monitor for registry changes and alert. A good logging on a modern operating system, and I mean Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, anytime there is a registry change, you can have an audit setting, and then that can be pushed to your logging, or even you can build your own alert saying, if I see this, whatever Microsoft's error code is, then alert me that is taking place. Great points, though, for sure. Any other questions?
Can I just come back on that VM question?
Sure.
As well. We're seeing, so we do this in our day job, and malware doesn't care anymore about virtualization because most of us are virtualized anyway. With the thin clients that are knocking around and all the Windows systems we've got, they do care about sandboxing them. So they do detect some of the techniques that we use in sandboxing.
Yeah, there's a couple families of malware that are exploiting EMET now, and breaking out with administrative credentials from that sandbox. There's also one of the first things the exploit kits are designed to do is hose whatever brand of antivirus you have, but keep the icon down in the corner. So you're right. Like I was really trying to make a very easy to follow kind of demonstration, but
And that will get 80–90% of the malware reset.
in general, yes. That's been my experience so far, that if I'm trying to just figure out what has gone wrong, or if I suspect that this is some sort of threat, putting it through that will really help you. There's more advanced stuff, absolutely, that looks to see for the VMware hooks, looks to see what type of software is installed, and then says, no, I'm not going to participate. I opt out. Brexit first. Bad joke. I just hope they don't round up all the Canadians and throw them out of the country. That would be very bad. But I'm turning into a poll, so that's going to be good. Any other questions? Sure, at the back.
Are there any tools after you've analysed it to export a list of what it's talked to, so you can supply that to a firewall admin, so he can then make the immediate changes to then prevent it spreading any further?
Other than cutting and pasting. So Cuckoo Sandbox does a great job of generating kind of a good report that, again, you can just pull out 4 or 5 of the lines saying, this URL is for command and control, this is the IP address. You know, if you should block Tor too in a business environment in general, because there are strains of malware now that use Tor proxies in order to get to their command and control. So yeah, there's a variety of different things, but yeah, in general, that's what I like about Recorded Future, is they usually give you the top 10 malware IP addresses for command and control on a daily basis. So it's like copy, paste, send to DevOps, copy, paste, send to DevOps, copy, paste, send to DevOps, right? So cool. Yes, sir.
Volatility.
Yes.
Mentioned about doing the analysis.
Yeah.
If you can use volatility to take a memory dump, that can also give you the information.
Absolutely, it can.
Yes.
It's not just the registry, it's also in the memory. And one of the nice things about memory analysis is that if it's an encrypted binary in memory, it won't be encrypted. So you can actually see what's going on. So like I said, that's the skill set for me on memory forensics is like here right now, and it needs to be up there for sure. I'm just not a programmer. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you so much.